Hello there, I'm Leo Walter for Kit Guru, and this is MSI Nightblade MI2. The original Nightblade MI is a small form factor PC, used Intel 4th gen architecture with the GTX 960 graphics card. This is Skylake, so Core i5 6400 or Core i7 6700, and either GTX 960 or GTX 970. Tragically, from my point of view, this is the lesser of the two. So the Core i5 a GTX 960, and it costs £699.99, call it 700 between friends. If you have the Core i7 with GTX 970, it'll cost you a penny under £1,000. There are, however, other bits and pieces going on to the SSD and such like, which means it's not just graphics and processor that separates the two models. The reason I've got it running at the moment is to show you the lights at the front, which is a system they call Mystic Light. There's some software, and again, screen grabs photos on Kit Guru as ever, called Gaming Center, which controls a number of things, including Mystic Light, which I actually really like. This is on a kind of random changey lighty sort of patterny thing. You can have static, you can have pulse and all that sort of breathing, but this I like. This is good. I'm going to turn the power off brutally just to pull the cord. If this is your own PC, obviously turning off the power without shutting it down properly is silly, but that's what I'm going to do. And off it goes. And I'm going to give you a quick tour before I go inside the system. So the front panel has a slimline DVD drive. You've got the lights, as you've seen. On this side, we have nothing. That's a little bracket falling off, which I'll come to in a moment. I've taken out 2 screws. On this side, we have the power button, a USB Type-C, a USB 3, headset jacks. Which is all part and parcel of being Skylake, because we haven't seen Type-C up to now unless it's on the bang up-to-date hardware. On the back, because you have a proper graphics card, you have a whole set of graphics connectors as you'd expect. You also have your standard MSI motherboard input-outputs. It's a small form factor, but it's got proper connections, including the HIMIC audio. You may or may not be aware that when MSI colours its USB 3 ports, it does them red rather than blue. The two blacks are USB 2, and there's your kettle cord. That there is possibly the most annoying aspect of this PC, because it's a tiny power supply at the bottom of the case with a tiny little fan which whirs away. It's not especially loud, it's got a certain pitch to it. 2 screws and off comes the cover and away. And that gives you a look inside the system. So on this side we have the graphics card occupying pretty much the entire view. On the top you have 2 drive caddies. Here we have a vacant drive bay. I'll show you closer in a second. And on the back of the motherboard we have a SODIMM slot. We also have an M.2 there. So if you wanted to add an M.2 drive SSD, you could indeed do that. So there is plenty of scope for upgrading the system without actually having to get too deeply inside it. Anyway, let's give you a closer look. Okay, so this is the bottom of the PC facing me. This is the top with that 2.5-inch drive caddy, which would ordinarily on the higher end model be populated with an SSD. If I just pull out the graphics card like so, as I say, I've released that little bracket which just secures it, 1 power block. That graphics card, when it's in the system, ordinarily the fans don't actually turn when it's just idling. They only start to spin when the thing's actually under load. GTX 970, I have to assume, is the same physical size, because there is no extra space in the chassis for a bigger graphics card. That reveals the CPU blower. Let's just pop it up this way for a moment and pull out the 2 drive caddies, 1 empty, ready for another 3.5-inch drive, 1 with a 1TB WD blue. Lay it back down again, and you can see that we have, so this blower is parallel to the CPU, so the CPU cooler is on the CPU, heat pipes go to the blower, air gets blown out horizontally. It's quite a neat setup, and it's not exactly like a laptop, it's sort of an overblown larger version laptop, but neither is it a regular desktop cooler. It's a hybrid system that works very well in this setup, and I like it. You will see photos on Kit Guru which show that the big parts of this system are very neat and tidy. So MSI motherboard, obviously with CPU cooler fine, graphics card slots in. It's obviously a conventional graphics card, so that's good. They haven't had to sort of make some weirdy homebrew hardware. Power supply sits at the bottom using what space there is. That's absolutely fine. The laptop memory is is laptop SODIMMs, which again, no problem there. It is slightly peculiar to see that the little CMOS battery has actually been stuck with presumably self-adhesive tape on to the memory. I've never seen anything like that before. Actually sticking something to the memory. Maybe it's just it was easy to reach. Anyway, the point is that all the stuff in there you will not ordinarily need to go and touch. If you want to upgrade the system, you have a spare drive caddy. And if you go to the back of the system, as said before, you have there the option of changing memory. And there you have the option of adding an M.2 SSD. So a surprising amount of scope for upgrading a system should you feel the need without actually doing any sort of major engineering. The fact you have that USB 3.1 Type-C connector is also hugely significant, as I said a few times in our reviews. As we get more peripherals, external drives and such like coming along that use the Type-C, it's going to lead to huge potential for expanding systems without having to do without having to go inside the thing at all. So even though this is a small form factor PC, which is not necessarily the sort of thing that will appeal to Kit Guru readers, it does actually have a surprising amount going for it. The one source of upset to me is that this is the lesser model, the GTX 960 rather than the GTX 970, and indeed Core i5 rather than Core i7, but that's my personal cross to bear. The slightly more grunty version will be coming soon. Testing of the thing, it behaved exactly as you'd expect with a Core i5 and GTX 960 is absolutely fine. In games, when I was using, for example, Thief at high preset, average was 47.8 frames per second, minimum 32 frames per second. If you're looking for that 60 frames a second, you're going to have to modify your settings, but GTX 960 is always going to be the way. I'm absolutely confident GTX 970 in this would give you the full HD gaming experience that we all look for, but I don't like to think how it's going to impact heat and noise. I don't think it'd be terrible. This system is impressively cooled, but it has to have an effect. A more grunty processor, more grunty graphics, the heat has to go somewhere. But until I actually see it for myself, of course, I can't really comment on how it will be. As it was with this system, the CPU, when it was loaded using AIDA64, so totally unfair synthetic stress test, the CPU went to 54 degrees, it was idling at 33, the GPU also idled at 33, went up to 57, so 54 and 57, which is pretty good. I mean, you can see there's not a lot of space for the hardware. On the other hand, there is a certain amount of airflow. I mean, even things like the drive caddies and such like are all perforated, which has to help a little bit of air to get through the system. But the ventilation, they've done a decent enough job on it. It's a small chassis, but it's not absolutely minuscule. And they've used I would guess that they've used their laptop knowledge and know-how to make this system work properly. So there is a lot more going on this side than you might first guess from the outside. MI2 is a significant upgrade from MI, not just Skylake, but DDR4, the fact you got the M.2, the fact you got USB Type-C, this is all good stuff. It just so happens the graphics card I've got is hugely familiar from the original MI in this particular version. GTX 970, I would have liked to have seen that. But there we go. So this is a little order for Kit Guru, and this is the updated MSI Nightblade MI2.